Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Coach Chran's Corner, sponsored by Team Cardhoarder. We're going to be doing some more no banless modern against Devin this week, and unfortunately, I did not build this deck. I wish I could claim that I built it because it's awesome, but unfortunately, I did not. I did find this list though a little while back. There's a store in Seattle called the Mox Boarding House, and they had a tournament that was basically no banless modern. And I browsed through some of the lists that they had from the tournament that they did, and one of the lists caught my eye. Actually, a couple of them did, but this one especially. I really liked the way that this deck looked. I wanted to try to build something around Skullclamp. I think that that's the best card in no banless modern. I think it's the most powerful card to build around. So. And then this one, it really, I think Young Pyromancer is a fantastic way to abuse Skullclamp. It was, at least is the most effective way that I could figure out. I tried Lingering Souls last week, and it was good. It still has a lot of potential, I think, but playing both black and white is a bit of a cost. However, playing blue and red, now we're speaking my language. We got a bunch of broken cards in blue. We got Treasure Cruise, we got Ponder, Preordained, Mental Misstep, all of these completely busted magic cards that we get to pair with our Skullclamp draw engine. This deck is really powerful, it's really efficient. The mana cost, the mana curve of the deck is super condensed. So yeah, basically your Delver deck, it's blue-red Delver more or less. So our creature suite, we've got Delver of Secrets, we've got Young Pyromancer, and we've got Snapcaster Mage. All these creatures can get killed by Skullclamp other than a flipped Delver, in which case we can still equip the Skullclamp to the Delver and have it be a 4/1, and if they kill it, then we get to draw 2 cards, which is also just amazing. Provides a quick clock, and even if we don't have the Skullclamp, we can just, grind them out really easily. We've got a lot of really cheap interaction. There's some spell snares, hard counter for 1 mana, really good. Mental Misstep, one of the best cards in banless modern. For that, I feel like if you don't have 4 Mental Misstep in your deck, you're going to need a really good reason why. This card is unbelievably good. I mean, there's a reason why it's banned in Legacy, and it was banned in Legacy quickly too. It didn't really stick around for very long. A lot of this deck has a lot of cards that didn't stick around very long in Legacy actually. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's more powerful than your average Legacy deck. Spell Pierce, another really cheap counter spell. There's a ton of really good targets in this format. Things are going really, really fast. So the more powerful your format is, the more effective 1 mana counter spells are, basically. Because it allows you to trade your 1 mana spell for their hopefully more than 1 mana spell. Or at the very worst, a 1 mana spell for a 1 mana spell. So we're going to be gaining a lot of tempo with cards like Spell Pierce, Mental Misstep, Spell Snare. Both Spell Snare and Mental Misstep, they counter things that are more expensive than the amount of mana that you have to pay for them as well. Spell Snare, you pay 1 mana in a card, you get rid of their card plus 2 mana, so you're up on resources. Mental Misstep, you pay 2 life in a card, and they lose their 1 mana card, so they pay 1 mana in a card, so you're up on resources. There's a lot of cards in this deck, actually, that make you lose life. Between the mana base, fetch lands and dual lands, Cataxian Probe, and Mental Misstep, you're taking a lot of damage. Also got Shot sent to the sideboard. Let's see. For the card draw, we've got Ponders and Preordains, both very, very powerful cantrips, banned in Modern normally. We've got Cataxian Probe, probably should be banned in Modern, honestly. It's one of the best cards in Modern. And they're all like really, really cheap, so that your Young Pyromancer, once you get that down, you can just start building an army almost immediately. And then we've got Treasure Cruise, which allows us to refill very, very well, as well as Skullclamp, which allows us to refill very, very well. It's very common to just go through 2/3 of your deck. I wouldn't be surprised if I have a lot of games where I have 10 plus cards more drawn than my opponent over the course of games. Unless, of course, they're also doing Skullclampy, Treasure Cruisy things, which, honestly, maybe what this format is about after it gets a little bit more solved. We got some Burn, Lightning Bolt, obviously an incredibly efficient removal spell. Very good with Snapcaster Mage. And Force Bolt, which is another pretty efficient removal spell. I think Forked Bolt is the right one-drop removal spell, or the shock of choice, however you want to say it, because of Skullclamp, basically. I think that there's a lot of cards that are going to be making 1 toughness creatures, so that you can Skullclamp them really easily, because I think that this format is a lot about Skullclamp decks. And having access to Forked Bolt means that you get a 2 for 1 mana, which is unbelievably good. If you can cast a Forked Bolt and kill 2 actual cards with it for 1 mana and 1 card, it's going to be, you're really far ahead. It's a great tempo play, and it's a good card advantage play as well. Other than that, mana's pretty simple. We got some basics. We got some fetch lands, Scalding Tarns, of course, and some Steed Vents. And then we got 1 Hallowed Fountain so that we can splash our white cards in the sideboard, because Modern, and I guess no banless Modern as well, has really powerful sideboard cards. So yeah, let's move on to the sideboard. We got a couple of gut shots. I think that's just more efficient cards. Like I was saying earlier with the Forked Bolt, lots of 1 toughness creatures in this format, I think. Being able to gut shot them just allows us to make incredibly efficient trades and come out ahead over the first couple of turns. We want as many free spells as we possibly can over the first couple of turns so that we can be up on resources. Things are going to be trading really, really fast in this deck and in this format. So having Phyrexian mana cards, which allows us to not have to pay mana for our stuff, is really good. Another thing that we've got, the countertop package on the sideboard. I think that this is something that might be pretty common in this format. If you're playing blue cards and you don't necessarily want to be a counterbalance deck, but counterbalance top is really good against combo decks, then it's something that you might want access to in your sideboard. We got a couple of Monastery Mentors. These are for basically if we want 2 more young Pyromancers. Another thing that's really cool with these guys, it says non-creature spell, so not just instant or sorcery like young Pyromancer says. So that means that you can do top things with it, just like activating tops back and forth, make a bunch of guys, cast a Stony Silence, make a guy, cast a Skullclamp, make a guy, what have you. I think Mentor might be really, really good. It's possible that there should just be a Skullclamp Mentor deck instead of a Skullclamp Pyromancer deck, or maybe there's just like good versions of both. But this card's incredibly good. It's very good in Vintage, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if it shines in this format as well. We got a Wear Tear. It's basically just the best disenchant that's ever been printed, basically. Allows you to have access to both. It's cheaper than Disenchant if you're wanting to blow up an enchantment, and it's just incredibly flexible. Great card. We got some Stony Silences. I think Skullclamp Affinity is probably one of the better decks. So having access to something that basically just shuts them down is really important. It does turn off our own Skullclamps, so maybe when we're bringing Stony Silence in, a lot of times we'll want to cut our Skullclamps. Maybe we just don't even care, though, just because of how powerful Skullclamp is. Like, if it shuts off our own Skullclamps, that's a shame, but we're drawing tons of cards with Treasure Cruise and Ponders and Preordains, so it might not be that big of a deal. It's hard to say. I think it would be a lot better if we had some sort of brainstorm effect or discard, like I don't know, a Thirst for Knowledge, or something along those lines, that allows us to get rid of cards that are useless. Then being able to have Stony Silence plus Skullclamp in the same deck would be a little bit more defensible. As is, I'm honestly not sure. But Stony Silence is just such a haymaker against Affinity that that's probably just fine. Finally, we got some Path to Exiles. It's the best white removal spell. I'm not a big fan of Path, honestly, in general. I just don't think it's a very good card. I mean, it's clearly a great card. But when you think of, like, resource trading, it's obviously, it's a -1. You know, you spend your 1 mana and 1 spell to kill their creature, which can cost any number of mana, and that's really where you make up the efficiency on Path to Exile, is you get to spend 1 mana and a card for their however much mana they spend on their thing, and a card. And it exiles, which is really good if they've got some graveyard shenanigans. Anything that's just like too big for our bolts to handle, basically, Path can come in against Tarmogoyf, possibly. I don't know. It's flexible, so I kind of like it. them getting the land obviously stinks. Same kind of issue with Declaration and Stone and Standard. It's annoying because you're going to be down a card, but it just kills anything. So the flexibility kind of makes up for the fact that it's not all that good as a resource trade. All right, so that's just about it. Oh, one more thing. We got a Smash to Smithereens in the main deck. This was in the deck list that I got from Mox Boarding House, and I kind of like it. There's a lot of good artifacts in this format. There's a lot of decks play artifacts, so I think I'm okay with having a one-of main deck Smash to Smithereens. It definitely might just be bad depending on how the metagame develops, and considering there isn't really any like large tournaments right now, it's kind of hard for the metagame to develop in the first place. But for now, I think I'm going to stick with it. It makes sense, and this is a really, really good card to Snapcaster Mage if it's relevant, if it has relevant text as far as them having artifacts. It's kind of like Searing Blaze, except it's you don't have to have the landfall clause, and you only have to pay 1 red and colorless instead of red. You pay 2 mana, you get a removal spell, and you get to bolt them, which is just great. It's all you really want out of a red spell. So, yeah, we're going to go ahead and play this against Devin, and I think this deck's probably a good deal better than the deck I played last week. That deck was a bit untuned, and just kind of off the top of my head, this deck, a lot of things in it make a lot of sense. I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm usually not one to play Delver, but I really, really like Skullclamp, and Skullclamp on Pyromancer just seems amazing to me. So, yeah, let's give this a try.